Hello and welcome to Matcha Mornings, part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network. I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith, and I'm excited to dive deep on topics around holistic health, the power of food, hormone health, how the practices of yoga can impact our health and well-being, and much more. So grab your cup of tea, settle in, and let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Matcha Mornings. I am really excited that you've decided to join me for today's episode of the podcast. And today on the podcast, I am joined by Nicole and Carrie from Resolve Pain Guru. And Nicole and Carrie's mission is to bridge somatic neuromuscular re-education with yoga therapy, functional movement, and mindfulness. And they are all about inspiring, educating, and helping people transform through non-pharmaceutical pain relief. And they have an online platform with videos on demand and a method, and they also work with people one-on-one. And really, Nicole and Carrie are super passionate about helping people who are in pain or chronic pain. And so we had so much to talk about that we split this episode into two parts. So part one, which is this episode that you're currently listening to, is all about their background with yoga, how they came together to do the work that they're doing, and then diving into a little bit around the method that they teach, which is a blend of somatics, yoga, mindfulness, functional movement, retraining, all with the goal of helping to heal mind-body pain. We also dive into the mind-body connection and what that really means. And Nicole and Carrie are so informed around this. They have so much knowledge around pain and chronic pain. And so I learned so much from this episode. And then we dive in even further in the next episode that'll be coming out in part two to talk more about the pain body, chronic pain, the solution, and all of that type of stuff. So you can stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, I hope that you really enjoyed this episode with Nicole and Carrie from Resolve Pain Guru. Carrie, Nicole, welcome to the podcast today. I'm really excited to have you here with me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation. I feel like we're going to cover so much good, interesting, relevant information. But before we get into talking about pain, somatics, yoga, all of that goodness, can you both just tell me a little bit of your background with yoga and kind of how you came to be working together?
Sure. So it's Nicole here. I live in Toronto, and I did my yoga training. So it's been about 17 years of a journey, and I opened up a studio at that time, and worked there for quite a number of years, and couldn't figure out why people kept getting pain, and so that led me into this pain path, and that went all the way into becoming a certified Soma Yoga therapist through the International Soma Yoga Institute. I also became certified in Pilates and used that as sort of part of my pain resolution functional movement retraining in the work that I do. So I've been at this for about 17 years.
Wow, that's amazing. That's definitely a long journey with all the work that you've been doing, and I'm really excited to learn more from you. Carrie, what about you?
I have a similar story. I mean, I certainly got into this line of work about 14 years ago as well. I was a little bit tired of being in the corporate world, and I really wanted to reach out and help people in a different way. And I started my teacher training back in 2008. And, just like most teachers, you're super passionate about yoga and want to feel and do it in your bodies. You want to teach, and I started out that way. But the evolution of learning and working with clients kind of went from a bigger group setting where it was a very outward and maybe more of a fitness focus yoga practice to much more therapeutic one-on-one practice, where I ended up evolving into this realm of working with people in pain. And over that course, took several trainings in the therapeutic application of yoga, and then discovered somatics. And then over time have blended the two in a really unique and useful way to help my clients here. And yeah, so now I'm up in the Yukon, and I've had my practice here now for about 6 years.
Wow, that's amazing. And how did the two of you meet and start working together?
Well, that was all Carrie's doing. So we call ourselves soul sisters and pain geeks because we are so passionate about educating people about pain and helping them to reduce and resolve it. And so we sort of had this interest without really realizing, we'd met in one of our first teacher trainings way back when, I think in 2010. And then Carrie was always looking for, a new interesting course and some new training that was coming up, what have you. And so she would pick up the phone and call me and go, "Hey, I got this one. You want to go?" And that took us to Calgary, and that took us to the USA and different places like that. And so we would get together because we live on opposite sides. I'm in Toronto, she's in the Yukons here in Canada, and so we were so far apart. But this was our opportunity to get together, and so we made a point of trying to do that, as often as we possibly could. And that literally, we went from this sort of wide funnel of just checking out some trainings into this narrow funnel right down into the somatics and soma yoga realm and working with people in pain. And that's how we got to know each other.
And I'll add to the story. I mean, I had approached her and I said, what we would do is we would spend several hours on the phone or over Zoom, and we would be talking about cases. And we just couldn't get enough of it. It was like talking to your best friend about something you were super passionate about. And, it was like, oh my God, I just wish you lived closer. Oh my God, I wish we could work together. And then this idea popped in my head, like, why can't we work together? Why can't we partner? So that was sort of how it evolved. And it was, I think it was, and I'm just thinking of the year, it was 2015 now. And it was in the fall, and I just kept, Nicole, we've got to partner. I think we've got to reach more people, not just in our own locales. Yeah, it was shortly after Christmas. Nicole called me back and she says, I've been thinking about it. I'm going to take you up on your idea. I think this is a great idea. And I said, finally, yes, yes, yes. So we've been working together as partners and as really good friends ever since then.
And what year did you say that was? Sorry, did you say 2018?
27. Well, we talked about it in just before Christmas in 2017, and we actually incorporated our business in April of 2018. So we've been working together now for a few years, 3 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so for people listening, I'm sure they're like, how on earth do you run a business together between Toronto and the Yukon? And for people listening, your business is Resolve Pain Guru. Can you tell myself and listeners a little bit like how you actually run this business from, different parts of Canada and like very different parts of Canada? You guys are quite far apart.
Sure. Well, our goal was to be paperless when we put this company together. So believe it or not, we actually don't have any paper files for our company, and everything is online anyway, right? Because all of our platforms that people can access are basically video on demand online platforms. And then when we do any kind of recording or what have you, we can share those files electronically. So literally the entire company is electronic. And there, of course, now, there's so many amazing platforms for to have the ability to do that. And we co-collaborate about twice a week. We get together, and some days we'll spend 6 hours on Zoom or on the phone, and we write and we write and we write and we talk and we write and we talk and we write, and then we produce stuff, and then we just store it, somewhere on the cloud so that we both have access to it. So it's really been, we've had to learn a lot, I can tell you, about technology, because neither of us was this tech savvy when we started. And I'm sure anybody who's does anything with tech, you realize that, you start with one thing, but then you need something else and something else, something else. So we've had to learn so much since 2018. It's quite grown now into what we now have which is the Resolve Pain Guru video on demand. And so the reason we actually decided to go this way is because we have, just us as individuals, without even kind of thinking about putting anything together, we had produced so much content, and we decided to kind of begin to amalgamate it. And then we went ahead and produced more content, and we wanted people to get access to that content because pain is an epidemic across the world, and people only have allopathic options really that they would typically want to go towards. And we thought, we really need to educate people. We got to make this work accessible to everyone, because we were having phenomenal success with our clients. and in our private practices here in Toronto and there in the Yukon. And we thought, well, we got to find a way to bring it so that everybody can access it. And what better way to do that than to put it on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you were doing this, kind of before this pandemic trend of everyone going online. And I was doing that with my business as well. And I can definitely relate in what you said with the technology. I mean, even still, I feel like I've been doing this forever and I'm still learning new technologies and whatnot to make my business more efficient and just to make it more efficient for the people I work with and that type of thing. So really cool to hear that you're able to make this work from different places in Canada and reaching people all over the world. And you very much blend somatics, yoga, mindfulness, functional movement, retraining, and that's what helps heal the mind and body. And one thing I love on your website is that, right, one of the first things I can see is non-pharmaceutical pain relief, which is something that I am also very passionate about. So I'd love if we could kind of dive into, all of these different things that you blend together. Because I think a lot of listeners would be familiar with yoga and probably mindfulness and maybe some functional movement, but tying it together and then bringing in the somatics, I think is something that is a little bit new to me and I'm sure other people listening. So can you talk about, this method that you teach and kind of how you developed this?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, I kind of want to start. This is Carrie again. I kind of want to start a little bit, addressing yoga and how it's come to be known in the West. There are just so many flavors, right? There's so many offerings. There's studios on this corner, and you drive down a few blocks, and there's a studio here, and you've got intensive classes, you've got heated classes, you've got people who have been trained in different ways. I'm going to make a generalization, but I'm going to say it's quite common. The average type of class in the West is quite outwardly focused, in the sense that, yoga in the West is seen as a form of exercise. Yes, there's a mind-body component to it. But I think that when you speak with someone who's new to yoga, they go, oh, I just took up yoga and, I'm not very flexible, right? Like we hear that a lot, So there's this idea right away that yoga is something to be achieved and it's an outward expression. And there's just this huge emphasis on asana, which are the postures themselves. Nicole and I would both agree, like we both started that way. We both had training in this idea of, there are, it's warrior 1 and it's warrior 2 and it's Tadasana, and you're learning all of these forms and these postures. And in that training as a yoga teacher, absolutely, we were also trained in the yogic philosophy, where we're taught the yamas and niyamas, which are, those ethical principles by which we want to live by. We started to learn a little bit about the Yoga Sutras, which isn't really taught in a mainstream class. Some of the theory might be weaved in a little bit, but when most people go to yoga, they're doing their practice, they're getting their workout, or they're pushing their bodies, they're getting a very short integration or shavasana at the end, and then they're off, they're off into their lives, right? But the true intent of yoga is really to get to know oneself. It's to quiet the body and the mind so that the practitioner can have a direct experience of his or herself. It's interesting because are people aware of that? It's an interesting question. Are people actually aware of the deeper meaning, right? It's not a religious practice. It's an experience. It's how do we start to get to know ourselves and from our perspective, so that you can get to know the message that your body is sending you so that you can heal yourself. So the practice of yoga itself, as most of us are drawn to, is brilliant, right? We want to get to know ourselves. We want to learn how to live from a place of consciousness. We want to get to know ourselves so that we can align with who we are. And, because we're not that great at quieting our minds, the doing aspect of yoga is more emphasized. At least I can definitely say from my own experience, it was a doing practice when I started. Absolutely. And this sense of needing to achieve through the practice, it detracts, and it also distracts from the much bigger potential of how it was authentically taught, particularly, in India, particularly, in the past, where the master teachers taught people how to quiet their body so they could then enter into meditation and pranayama so they could get quiet. So when we relate that to the perspective of pain, there is this myth in a way that we can stretch tight muscles to feel better, right? There's this idea that we'll just stretch it out and it'll improve our function and we'll get strong and we'll get mobile. And that's not always the case. And we know that because clients come to us, or we've had our own experiences where we've been trying to stretch something in repetition and the pain is not going away. There's discomfort and we're pushing through something. And so Nicole and I, as we mentioned, as we started, we've both spent many, many years working with clients to help them feel better. And we have done that. Both of us started after teaching just a generalized class, moving into a therapeutic aspect where yoga was slowed down, where we started to address chronic pain and tension. And we started to see that clients were getting better. They were feeling better. They were sleeping better. So while yoga therapy models and various schools offer tremendous and powerful teachings, and we both, have trained with some amazing teachers, there was this time about 6 or 7 years ago where we started to be introduced to Thomas Hanna's work. And so Thomas Hanna was the founder of Hanna Somatics, or clinical somatics. Yeah, it just really transformed our understanding of what is this mind-body connection, right? And just what really is possible, what's really possible in the realm of healing for ourselves. And that was sort of this impetus. It was like, oh my God, wow, this is the missing piece. So, in this realm of self-connection, we've really, as we learned how to work somatically, it really changed how we worked with clients and also how we worked in our own practices.
I would actually like to share a story, Carrie, at this point, if you don't mind. So a few years ago, I broke my jaw, and I was had surgery and had to wear this brace thing with rubber bands on it. It's quite a painful process, and I had to wear them for quite a few months. And just after I had my surgery, long before I had this accident happen, I was signed up to go to my Soma Yoga Therapy 1,000-hour training, which was in the US. And I was like, holy crap, I don't think I can do this. Like, I'm not well. And I thought about it. And it was about 4 weeks after my surgery, I had to get on an airplane. And my family's like, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? This doesn't make any sense. And I said, no, I think I need to do this. And I went there and I was treated like how we treat our patients or clients. And that was about a 2-week period, I think, for 10 days. I can't remember exactly. And every day I had this Soma yoga practice where there was the blending of this brilliance of everything that yoga brings to the table, and then the element of weaving in the somatic piece. And it was incredible to me. It just sold me on the fact that I was in the right place, because my jaw was being forced together with these rubber bands, and it was incredibly painful. And then I was allowed to take the rubber bands off so that I could drink a shake or soup or what have you. And I'd take the rubber bands off, and my jaw was locked so tight that I couldn't put up my fingers in between my teeth. And then I would do a somatic practice, and all of a sudden my jaw would just drop, like it would just drop open. And it was an incredible experience, and a real, very affirming to the fact that there was this, because keep in mind, right, I was a practicing yogi. I was doing all sorts of things to help myself, even, from the time it broke to the waiting for surgery. Right. And it was a real affirmation for me that there was this missing piece that I had not yet fully understood about getting quiet, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And it was a real game changer for me. And it was the reason I was able to heal to the level that I've healed right now, because the allopathic world had nothing to offer me. And had I not done what I did, I would be in a much different situation today.
Yeah, that's incredibly inspiring to hear. So thank you so much for sharing that, Nicole, and Carrie, thank you for sharing so much of the background of what you do. And, just, I can hear the passion when I hear both of you talk, and it's really incredible and inspiring to hear that. And I think when we first started talking, I shared that I'm like a little bit familiar with Somatics. One of the studio owners that I work with on the business side of things has started dabbling with Somatics. And so in his classes over the last, I guess, like 6 to 9 months, we've started doing a little bit at the end of class. And it's just really interesting because it's something I was not familiar with at all. I'd never even heard the word prior. And we would just start doing these movements that don't really feel like much. And then all of a sudden, all the tension in my neck would go away, which is, I mostly sit at a computer all day. Therefore, I have like incredibly tense neck and upper shoulders and that type of thing. And it was just kind of like, wow, how does this work? So I'm kind of curious if you guys can dive in a little bit with like, what is somatics and how does this like mystery medicine actually kind of work in the body?
Sure, I'll start. Well, somatics is really a practice. So it involves a technique called pendiculation. So you've learned that through your classes, right? This interesting word called pendiculation, which really is the technique of somatics. And what it allows us to do is to regain the brain's control over our muscles. So what happens when we go through life is stress accumulates. We do repetitive movements which cause our muscles to essentially get stuck short and tight, right? We sit at the computer and unknowingly we might start to creep our shoulders up to our ears, right? Or maybe we're sitting at a workstation, you're traveling. So you're probably sitting at a different workstation from week to week, right? And you might notice that as your shoulders kind of creep up towards your ears, unconsciously, that the shoulders kind of stay there. It's interesting, right? It's like we modify our position in order to meet our workstation, and then we leave our workstation and our shoulders are still hugged up to our ears. And so what is happening is that the brain is learning how to keep those shoulder muscles short and tight up to the ears. And so what happens with somatics and with pendiculation is that we're starting to go into those patterns in order to create a release response. So we're working with the nervous system. We're working with the brain. We're paying a ton of attention. And Nicole's story is a great example. It's like when she was able to get so quiet and nurture her nervous system and really slow down and sense and feel, she was able to use this technique of pendiculation to start to release this stuck tension that had accumulated, as you can imagine, from like very significant invasive surgery, right? All the trauma probably that led up to that actual event of having the jaw being broken, and then all the associated thoughts and emotions that come with that whole experience, right? That her nervous system was essentially in a protection mode. And so essentially with somatics, what we're doing is we're learning how to reset and release the stuck tension in the system that works to address our full body. So your example, Amanda, of like, hey, I'm doing a couple of these somatics movements at the end of class. So you might have gone through a whole yoga class, and then you go just do these little movements that start to release tension in the trunk of the body. And you go, oh my God, my neck tension went away, or my jaw softened, or I noticed that I no longer have pain in my back, or my shoulders at ease. So that essentially is a short explanation of how process works.
And if I could also just add that we're speaking now in the realm of chronic tension or pain, and when we're suffering from any kind of chronic tension or pain, there's a bit of a disconnect in our knowledge, and we tend to look outside of ourselves for a solution. Mm-hmm. And we have this whatever going on in our body, and we would come to a yoga practice and go, well, I'm going to stretch my tight hamstring, and trying to do that over and over again, but somehow it doesn't release the hamstring. And what we begin to figure out, apart from the fact that somatics can address, the brain awareness of what's going on, we've also started to really look at, well, how is the whole thing, how is the whole person showing up, and in terms of how this pain is showing up in their body. And if you're starting to kind of look at things like, I don't know, you go, well, my glutes are hurting, or, I'll do pigeon pose every day. And then, pigeon pose doesn't solve the glute pain. And then try to sit in meditation and your mind's really busy. Then you have to start looking at, for that individual, well, what are your thought patterns like? What are your conscious and unconscious patterns in your body and your posture and your breath and your life? Like, it's not just about looking at the person as just a body, but looking at the whole being. And so somatic teaches us how to understand how the nervous system responds to life and stress and repetitive movements and injury, and then how to release and reset the system. So you're reducing the load that shows up as tension or pain.
Yeah, thanks for all of that. That's super interesting. And so I guess one of the things I think that we're really kind of programmed for, and this is myself included with this, especially in the West, I think is like, we feel something like pain and we're immediately like, oh, I'm going to take something for it, whether it's just like over the counter, like ibuprofen or Advil or something like that. Or if it's like, oh, I need to go see a doctor so I can get something that's going to, be a bit stronger for this pain. And I feel like one of the things that has kind of come up so far as we've been chatting is this, like, our body's way of communicating pain is this way of telling us that something's off. And we just kind of want to like make it go away as opposed to kind of like tune into it. Mm. Can you guys touch on that a little bit in terms of like your experience working with clients and how your method kind of fits in with this?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I think the first piece of information that we want to get out to listeners is that, if we really want to address chronic or persistent pain, is that we have to slow down and we have to get quiet and pay attention and listen. So if we're shifting that lens, that focal point from outwards to inwards, that's the first step. Right. And then the second thing is that, the reason why why pain is such an epidemic now is that, we are dealing with an inordinate amount of stress, right? There's just so many demands that are coming at us. There are world pressures, there are financial pressures, there are social media pressures. I mean, I can even relate myself. I mean, it's overwhelming owning a business sometimes when you think about all the aspects of things that you need to manage, in order to, deliver a good service and a good product. And so our nervous systems being stressed just exacerbates that pain process, right? And so what we tend to do, and I think what society teaches us is like, well, just take that pill. If you just take that pill, no problem, it'll go away. Or it's no problem taking a Robaxacet once a week. I mean, really, it's just going to fix the problem, but it's not really fixing the problem, right? It's a Band-Aid solution. And, what somatics teaches us is that, really, if we think about what somatic or soma is the root word of somatics that acknowledges the fact that we have sensing, feeling bodies, that we're inherently intelligent beings, and that we can self-regulate. Our nervous systems were designed to bring us back into balance, right? But often the piece that's missing is we just don't know how to do it. So the medical system will say, here, just take the Robaxacet, no problem. But really where the deeper underlying problem is like we're trying to figure out, well, what is it that is out of balance in the nervous system? Why is the brain telling those back muscles to not let go? What's the emotional tie to why those back muscles get tight every time we take on too much in our business life or our home life?
And we all have these habituations. I, in my own body, if I'm, doing all my finances and my taxes and what have you, my right shoulder will be like above my ear. Right. And it's this pattern that I have where if I'm feeling stressed about money, my shoulder goes only my right side and it goes up. And I know instantly when I feel that happening in my body, I know that there's a pattern that I have. When I worry about a certain thing, this certain thing happens in my body. And we all have those patterns. And what the somatic piece is asking us to do is to begin to tune in and slow down just a little bit more to try and listen to the message in the body and then respond accordingly. I want to give you another example of something I was working with a client. And this client, one had frozen shoulder. So if you try to imagine you're lifting your arm up and you want to go get a teacup out of the cupboard, well, your ability to lift that arm up is not there. Okay. So this is what she had going on. And we were working and she was in, her nervous system was definitely in an overdrive, continuous state of alert. Kind of like a deer in the headlights, like really big eyes, right? So that lets me know that the nervous system is just really out of whack at that point. And so we were working and stuff just wasn't happening the way I was expecting it to. And so we just completely stopped what we were doing. And I took her through, helped her to ramp her nervous system down and explained to her how the nervous system works and how it holds us in pain and all that kind of stuff. So she had the knowledge. And then we went into a little bit of a practice to slow things down. And then we had the same movement I was doing. We slowed it down that it was so micro that I could barely see she was moving, but she could feel what was going on in her own body. And at the end of that practice, she could lift her arm up as if she wanted to get that cup out of the cupboard.
Wow.
That's how significant this work can be. And both Carrie and we could go on forever with examples. And it all comes down to recognizing that our bodies are incredibly intelligent and they know how to heal. But we live in a state of absolute overdrive. We're continually alert. We're dictated by the demands of work, busy, competitive, attention diverting, social media, multitasking. Our nervous systems, our minds are like, you can't even have a good night's sleep. And so there's so much disharmony and dis-ease. There's no ability for the body to heal within that environment. It needs to be given what it needs to transition into a healing phase. And that's basically what we help our clients do.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love that because I just feel like, so many of us live in this state of, like you said, overdrive, and we're constantly stimulated. And I mean, more so than ever, right? Like we're doing almost everything from computers and electronics these days. And we don't have that in-person connection as much as we did prior to the start of this pandemic that we're still in. And I think so many of us have all these different types of stressors. I mean, there's money, relationships, jobs, houses, and then just like the day-to-day worries on top of that. And it just kind of like lives in our body, and our kind of response to that in a lot of cases seems to be like, more coffee, less sleep, more doing. And for me, I feel like I was living in that. And I recognized that like, I can't keep going with this. I need to stop. And even this summer, I hit a place of like where I had some adrenal fatigue going on. And I was like, okay, I can't like keep going like this. Like I need to listen to what my body's saying. Like it's telling me what it needs and it needs me to slow down. And my job is to listen. But I think so many of us aren't in tune with that. Can we dive into a little bit around this kind of like mind-body connection? Because it really is that our mind or that our body tells us what we need, and it's kind of our responsibility to listen. Yet so many of us don't know how to, or we're programmed to, not listen in the way that necessarily we need to.
So first and foremost, we have to understand that the brain is the control center of the entire nervous system. And for good functioning of our bodies. And we talked about this earlier, that this soma, which is when I show people this, I sort of cut my head off with my hand and go, everything below my head considers soma, what's sensing and feeling. And so this body, the sensing and feeling body, is incredibly, incredibly intelligent. And when it's expressing pain to you, it's saying, to your point, please, somebody come and help me. And we have to recognize that we are each unique individuals. We have our own personalities and preferences and desires and experiences, whether good or bad. And all of this informs our pain body. And this are accounted for in the healing process. Because in the medical field, this is what they refer to as the sort of biopsychosocial model of treatment, where you look at all the aspects of the person. And we cannot purely address someone's physical body. In order to heal, we have to address all aspects of that person, their mind, their body, their spirit, their life experiences, their belief systems, their nervous system, their everything, their financial circumstances, whatever it is that they're dealing with at the moment. All of that shows up on my examination bed. And I have to look at all of those elements in order for this person to heal. And so the method that we teach, it brings together the brilliance of all these different modalities, right? From yoga and functional movement and the mind study and mind study work, because we have the intelligence and the ability to do that if we make that connection. And it's that ability to listen to the body and say, please give me some attention. And what we find typically with the folks that we work with is that when someone's been in pain for a really long time, they don't want to know about their body anymore. It's like it doesn't exist. They're so fed up of being in pain. They're so fed up of something not working. And we get really caught up in our heads and our brains. And we forget that we have this beautiful body and that we have to integrate the whole thing.
And the other piece that's really common is that, that there's something going on, like Nicole's story about the shoulder. That there's something going on in a shoulder. It's like, oh, that stupid shoulder, that stupid shoulder, it hurts all the time. Right. And we isolate the shoulder and think, the problem is just in the shoulder. And the problem is not just in the shoulder, right? Like the shoulder has a relationship to the rest of the body. The shoulder has a relationship to the emotions. The shoulder has a relationship to our daily habits, right? It just so happens that is where the body is sending out the biggest and strongest message. It's saying, please pay attention.
Hey everyone, we're just taking a quick break from the show to talk about energy bits. Energy bits are spirulina tablets made of one ingredient, algae. Nothing added, nothing subtracted, just 100% plant-based algae nutrition. No sugar, no caffeine, no gluten, no soy, no additives, no GMOs, no preservatives, no binders, nothing artificial. Just 100% algae, 100% green, 100% healthy, and 100% pure. Pure and simple, the way food should be. They have high protein, high beta carotene, high iron, high chlorophyll, high antioxidants, and over 40 plus vitamins, including the B vitamins. They have electrolytes, including magnesium, potassium, and are a great source of essential fatty acids. Honestly, I could go on and on and on about how great energy bits are for you, and that's why I've decided to partner with them. If you want to learn more about energy bits or order some yourself, you can head on over to energybits.com to learn more. Use the code WANDERBARN to get 20% off your order. Once again, that's energybits.com and use the code WANDERBARN for 20% off your order. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, absolutely. And so the brain kind of is controlling everything, and then it's our responsibility to tune into the signals that are being sent. And for you guys, do you feel like it's like somatics is kind of like, like if somebody takes away one thing from this in terms of chronic pain and how to get more in touch, is it starting to add somatics to their practice, or what does that kind of look like?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, bar none, the ability to get quiet and to move very gently in very gentle, controlled ways. So gentle movement that really is starting to regain the brain's control over the whole trunk of the body is foundational. Because if we can't pay attention and move in small ways, then how could we be functional in these bigger movement patterns? So, I mean, really, Nicole and I would say to every single client, you really need to be establishing a daily practice, like, 10 to 15 minutes a day of starting to do some of these Soma yoga movements. And we call them Soma yoga because, yes, you're doing the foundational movements that Thomas Hanna created. They were called somatic movements, but we weave in, conscious breath practices. We weave in these teachings about, you really just need to slow down and get quiet. And if you did that for your nervous system for just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you would start to notice all of these things, all these symptoms just start to shift. So absolutely. I mean, this is, as we said in the beginning, it's sort of that missing piece. And to weave the somatic movement in with and let it blend into a gentle yoga practice, or let it be the precursor before you go for a run, or let it be, the piece that gets your body nice and quiet so you can sit in your meditation practice. It's kind of like, it's like it's what I call it. I call it the reboot. Really, it's the reboot. It's kind of like your software upgrade that you do on your computer, on your phone on a regular basis. Well, this is what you do for your whole system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. I actually just had to do, I have a 2015 MacBook Pro. And so it's constantly like running low on space, and, it needs a little bit of extra love just because it's getting a little bit old at this point. We still love it. It still works really great, but I had to do a reboot the other day, and it's just amazing how, just pressing the restart button and letting it like turn itself off and like reload the apps and stuff just does wonders for it. And it's interesting to kind of apply that same sort of thought pattern to something like our bodies, and think about, how important things as basic as like getting a full night's sleep or giving yourself some quiet time. And I even find like, I have a regular meditation practice. I have a regular yoga practice, and most of that's like very intuitive and quite slow and just working into the places that are tight in my body. But I went to a yin class, a virtual yin class last Tuesday night, so a week ago from the time of recording. And it was so interesting to just watch how like kind of jittery I was, and how much I was having like a hard time just settling my mind from like a whole day of work and, walking through a busy city and all this type of stuff. And I feel like I'm like pretty conscious of these things. And I'm also not dealing with something like chronic pain in my body, yet just being able to kind of slow down and tune in was feeling really hard in that moment.
I would say that my experience with a Soma yoga practice is I've got two stories I want to tell you. One is I'm the story girl, if you haven't noticed yet. Two things. So number one is in my own experience, being practicing yoga and teaching yoga and Pilates and different things like that. When I started to do a Soma yoga practice, introduced to Soma yoga practice, I had never ever experienced a practice so deep and so profound ever in all of my yoga years. And that was a lot of years. It was like, I think it was a decade or more at that point. It was quite a profound experience about how deep the practice can become when you begin to really get into your body and sense and feel what's going on in your body. So that was very, very cool. And then fast forward a few years, and back in the day when we could go to yoga studio, a girlfriend of mine owned a studio nearby. And so I said, well, can I come in and do a little experiment with your class? And this particular, it's a moksha class, so they have a specific routine. And so what we did was we decided to break that routine up a little bit. So the first 20 minutes of the class, I would do some somatic movement with them, Soma yoga movement with them. And then the middle part, they would do, first they would do the first part of the practice. Then I would come in the center, the second 20 minutes, and I would do this somatic release with them. And then the third 20 minutes, they would repeat the same practice they just did. After the fact, people came up to me and they were just floored by how different the practice was the second time around. People would come up to me and say things like, I've had this chronically tight hip flexor for such a long time. It's part of my practice. I know it's there when we're going to do whatever lunges or what have you. And I didn't have that at all today. And that was the kind of feedback we were getting. And they only did a little 20 minutes. And even of the 20 minutes, part of that was just organizing, right? So it wasn't fully a 20-minute practice. And then they went right into into the next practice. And all of a sudden they feel this freedom of ease in their body that they hadn't experienced before. And that's what we keep talking about with folks, is that there's an ease and an effortlessness that comes with a body that's in balance, with a body that is not experiencing any chronic tension or any chronic pain. And chronic pain I think it deserves a little bit of a definition, because chronic pain, and we say ache, tension, pain, or persistent pain, is anything beyond 6 months. So if you've had anything going on in your body past 6 months with no marked improvement and there's no tissue damage anywhere, then that's considered in the chronic pain category. So lots of us have those known tight hip flexors when you do a warrior or a lunge. And this is what they were able to wash out of their system with that little practice. So can you imagine if they had a 2 or 3 times a week or every day little mini practice, how much they could wash of that tension, they could wash out of the system, and over time completely get rid of it, and then have this beautiful, deep practice that they can truly enjoy because there's this effortless and ease within it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I think that having something that's kind of like something you can do with a big time investment is really amazing. And so I think this is a good place to kind of wrap up part 1 of what we're going to talk about, since it's going to be, a couple weeks until the next episode of this comes out. Can you guys share where people can go to find you if they want to start digging into more resources, maybe even already start learning about this a little bit?
Absolutely. We'd love for folks to check out our website. So we've got 2 main sites that we'd love for you guys to check out. So resolvepainguru.com is our website, and we've got a lot of information that talks more about the method. We've got free learning resources there. And from there, then you can link to our digital on demand channel. So it's digital.resolvepainguru.com. We're also on Instagram and we're on Facebook. And we also have a YouTube channel. So we've got many free resources. And then we also have our blog on our website. And that's a really great way to start to kind of get like a regular blog post and start to learn some of this methodology and some of these underlying teachings, maybe that, you've never heard before. It's like it gets you questioning, how am I feeling in my body? What am I doing to do more of? Can my self-care practice be simpler and easier? Can I find more effortless ease in my life? And then can I, do the things that I love with more freedom, which is ultimately the goal, right? Whether you're tired and you are enjoying time outdoors, or you're a busy mom and you're caring for your kids, or, you're traveling the world and running, a podcast and all kinds of other things. Like, how do you, build a sustainable self-care practice that you can really enjoy and really feel great about?
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those links. I'll make sure that's all linked in the show notes. And thank you both for your time today. This has been so insightful, and I'm so excited to dive in more. I have so many more questions for you.
Thank you, Amanda. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Matcha Mornings. To find links mentioned in this episode, show notes, photos, and more, head on over to wanderbarn.com/podcast/matcha-mornings. To be the first to know about brand new episodes of Matcha Mornings, subscribe on your podcast app. If you enjoyed this episode of the show, please leave a review or send me an email at wanderbarn@gmail.com with the subject line Matcha Mornings. To follow along with me, Amanda Kingsmith, you can find me on Instagram at Amanda Kingsmith to learn more about other fun projects I'm working on. To find more great podcasts like this one on topics such as travel, the business of yoga, cryptocurrency, and more, head on over to wanderbarn.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.